right up the middle. Cobbs at the 40, at the 30, Cobbs at the 20, Cobbs at the 10. Touchdown, Arkansas! Touchdown, Arkansas! Oh, my! At the Auburn 40, the 30, the Auburn 20, the 10. Touchdown, Arkansas!
Ken Loggains here on AM 1260 WDKN. It is indeed an honor for me to speak with this next gentleman, one of my major influences in broadcasting, probably one of the reasons that I'm in broadcasting today. As a youth growing up in Arkansas, this gentleman was my eyes and ears on many a football Saturday for the Arkansas Razorbacks, as well as on television for Razorback basketball, and a gentleman that's no stranger to the folks around here in Middle Tennessee as well, talking about Mr. Paul Eels, sports director at WSM Radio and Television in Nashville from 1967 to 1978, I believe it was, before he moved to Arkansas in September of 78 and joined Channel 7 and has been there ever since. And, of course, he was the voice of the Vanderbilt Commodores for a few seasons, doing play-by-play, along with covering lots of Tennessee regional high school sports. You've been awarded the Associated Press Award for Best Sports Play-by-Play 7 times and counting. It is indeed a privilege to have you on the air with us today. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, Ken, thank you. You're most gracious, and it's a delight to hear your voice and to kind of reminisce maybe about both Arkansas and Nashville, Tennessee, and the Vanderbilt Commodores.
You still have quite a few connections here in Middle Tennessee, and I know you like to come back and visit friends and relatives every now and then, and Vanderbilt University and the whole Nashville area still has a very special place in your heart.
Well, that's true, Ken. My wife, Vicki, of course, grew up in Dixon and later moved to Nashville. I have 2 daughters that are in Nashville right now and 5 grandbabies, so it's always exciting for me to get back home, and with good reason.
The give to Cobbs, right up the middle. Cobbs at the 40, at the 30, Cobbs at the 20, Cobbs at the 10. Touchdown, Arkansas!
Well, of course, when you came on board there at KATV back in the fall of 78, that was a very exciting time to be associated with the Razorbacks. Of course, Eddie Sutton had just taken the triplets to St. Louis in the Final Four, and meanwhile, the first-year head football coach up on the hill, Lou Holtz's Hogs, had upset heavily favored Oklahoma in the 78 Orange Bowl. Let's talk a little football first. I'm sure very early on the job up there, you learned that the Texas game was pretty much the game every October for the Hogs, and you had a chance, I'm sure, to call a couple of big upsets. So one in Little Rock in 79. Your memories of the 42-11 Arkansas win over the top-ranked Longhorns in Fayetteville 2 years later back in 1981. Just some of your memories and reflections on that huge upset.
Well, that was a huge upset, and 2 nights before, Lou Holtz was the featured speaker at Arkansas Razorback Pep Rally, Ken, and he said, "You ain't seen nothing yet," referring to the fact that Arkansas was primed for the then number 1 team in the nation, Texas. And, it didn't take me long after my arrival at Arkansas to find out, while we were still in the Southwest Conference, that that was the huge rival, and the 2 ball clubs pretty much dominated play in the SWC. But it was a game late in the afternoon, and Texas had arrived. They had stayed overnight in Fort Smith, and they arrived very, very early and sat around their dressing room, I think, for about 3 or 4 hours. And on the first offensive possession, Texas fumbled. Billy Ray Smith Jr. recovered, and I guess what you'd call the whitewash was on. My golly, it was incredible. And Arkansas scored one right after another, and led, I think, 25-3 at one particular point, and went on to win that ball game 42-11.
One of those days that you see in sports every now and then where just everything goes right for one team, and no matter how much more talented the other team is, nothing goes right.
That's exactly right. And that was a great Texas football team, too, but certainly it's an outstanding Arkansas team as well.
You talk about Coach Holtz being a great motivator, getting his team ready. Of course, we were blessed back in the late 70s when we talk about basketball with one of the best, still going strong today, Coach Eddie Sutton. In March of 79, Sidney Moncrief's senior year, I believe it was the regional final against Larry Bird and the Indiana State Sycamores. That game went right down to the wire. It was a heartbreaker for Hog fans. What a great ball game. Of course, Sidney known for his defensive strengths, and he really had a handle on Larry Bird for much of that ball game.
Yeah, there's no question about that. That was probably one of the more exciting and one of the most memorable basketball games that I've ever broadcast. I was doing it on radio with then Sports Information Director Rick Schaefer. We were in Cincinnati, and of course Indiana State was undefeated coming into the ball game. Everyone was concerned about Larry Bird and the Sycamores, and U.S. Reed was tripped. He fell down, got back up. They called Arkansas for traveling. The Hogs were looking for one last shot to win the ball game, and of course the winner, Ken, as you recall, would go on to the NCAA championship again. So the Hogs were trying to get back to the Final Four one more time, and then it wasn't Larry Bird, but I can't think of his name here offhand, that had a little left-handed kind of a scoop shot in the middle as the buzzer sounded, or with about a second left, and Indiana State defeated Arkansas. And I never saw Eddie Sutton or Sidney Moncrief for a basketball team more dejected than that one that afternoon.
Well, I mean, you read my mind, because I was just about to say that, us diehard Razorback fans will always swear that U.S. Reed was tripped on his way down the floor, and that wasn't a traveling call, which was the call made. But what a tough way for Sidney to go out. But, of course, he had a fantastic NBA career. And, of course, Eddie Sutton's success at Arkansas continued into the 80s. He had regular NCAA appearances, All-American performers, Joe Klein, Scott Hastings, Alvin Robertson, Darrell Walker. You just go down the list. However, I remember a particular, I think it was a Sunday back in 1984 over at the old Pine Bluff Convention Center, when a small forward by the name of Charles Ballantyne came up really big in a regular season clash that we had with Dean Smith's North Carolina Tar Heels, led by Michael Jordan.
Yeah, that was something else. The ball club had been, I believe, down in Dallas and had played SMU. Maybe had been in College Station, I don't know, 2 days before. They had problems making it because of the weather to Pine Bluff for the ball game against North Carolina. And Alvin Robertson got somehow the basketball, to the baseline, and the shot that was heard all around Arkansas and maybe around the United States defeated North Carolina at that time.
Of course, not a lot of folks will remember, but that game, like we said, was actually played at Pine Bluff, because not a lot of the high-profile programs were crazy about coming into Barnhill Arena.
No, they weren't, and it was kind of set up as a home and home, and I think Arkansas returned the favor, or had been there the year before. I can't quite recall. Ken had gone to play North Carolina at their place, or in Charlotte maybe at that time, and not at Chapel Hill.
Of course, Coach Sutton left for Kentucky in April of 1985. Tulsa head coach Nolan Richardson was brought in to coach the Razorbacks. He brought a different brand of basketball to the state, which would one day be known as hog ball. And out of all of the games you covered in the old Barnhill Arena, Paul, I would venture to say that the atmosphere was never more electric than on a particular March evening back in 1987 when the NIT matchmakers pit the Arkansas State Indians against the Razorbacks. And I was lucky enough to be a student at the university at the time and was on about the fourth row on the student section. That place was pure bedlam, filled with Arkansas State Indian fans and, of course, Hog fans. A game that the Hogs looked to be down and out in, but some clutch shooting from Ron Hury and Kenan Whitby got them back into it. They win the game in overtime.
Yeah, that was kind of defined Nolan's stay at the University of Arkansas. There had been so much speculation that for the first time Arkansas and Arkansas State were going to compete, in a major sport. And the pressure was on Nolan to win the ball game. I think that there were people that felt had Nolan not been able to win that game against ASU, that he might have been fired. I don't believe, looking back at that now, it's necessarily true, but it was a great win for them, and it was a real struggle. And the only time that Arkansas and ASU have played in basketball or in football, because that's the edict that Arkansas Athletic Director Frank Broyles lives by. And so as long as Coach Broyles is the athletic director, the two shall not meet, Ken.
Arkansas alum Ken Hatfield took the reins of the football program back in '84. He brought the Flexbone in with him, and winning seasons and bowl appearances continued for the Fighting Razorbacks, as Coach Hatfield often referred to them. He found the perfect quarterback for his system, in the form of a guy you work with quite often these days on your football broadcast, Quinn Grovey out of Duncan, Oklahoma, I believe. Talk a bit about your memories of Quinn as a player.
Well, Quinn was a terrific player. He was a diminutive type, a terrific runner, ran that wishbone offense for Hatfield, the flexbone or wishbone, whatever label that you'd like to put on it. But I think Quinn was one of the great quarterbacks in Arkansas football lore, and just a gamer. He pulled so many ball games out. He ran the option, could throw the football effectively when he had to, and of course led Arkansas to back-to-back Southwest Conference championships and 2 trips to the Cotton Bowl, where they lost to Troy Aikman and UCLA the one year, I think it was 89 or 88, and then to Tennessee in a wild finish the next year in Dallas.
We could talk about so many memorable games from Quinn's career. Of course, we put quite a scare into Jimmy Johnson's Miami program down there at the Orange Bowl one year. But as far as a game that stands out in my mind, a regular season nighttime showdown in Little Rock. It's always wild after dark in the Rock for a big football game. Houston brought in Heisman hopeful Andre Ware back there in the fall of 1989. Just some of your recollections about that particular ball game.
Well, it was one of the great offensive games. Houston had a no-huddle offense, and Ware ran it beautifully. But Quinn Grovey probably had one of his greatest nights, and when one team would score, the other would turn around and answer it. And I thought up in the booth that the team that had the ball last would win the ball game, and that's pretty much the way it happened. And it was really a terrific offensive ball game.
As a new decade dawned, Arkansas jumped to the Southeastern Conference and had to run the gauntlet each year against powers such as Alabama, Georgia, Auburn, and Tennessee. And as the football program had a couple of tough seasons with SEC growing pains, the basketball program under Nolan Richardson was in very good hands with a new set of triplets, Lee Mayberry, Todd Day, and Oliver Miller. This group really made a statement early on in the SEC, winning the championship, the overall championship, regular season, their first year in the conference back in '92. And, of course, things culminated with the 93-94 season as a group of Hogs with Corliss Williamson, Scotty Thurman, Corey Beck, many others leading the way with the NCAA tournament win in Charlotte, North Carolina against the Duke Blue Devils. Paul, just your general thoughts on Nolan's squads back in the early 90s, culminating with that 93-94 squad.
Nolan's basketball team was highlighted by his marvelous pressure, and when Arkansas moved into the Southeastern Conference, I think the SEC was a little bit hesitant to give Arkansas the credit, but the Hogs won the league the first year, and the 40 minutes of hell that Nolan called his defense certainly was that, and that was truly a great basketball game between two outstanding ball clubs down in Charlotte. And when Arkansas won the ball game in the national championship, it set the stage for expectations that I think Arkansas fans still have, Ken. There's no question about it, and it was a great moment not only for Nolan but for the state of Arkansas. And only the second national championship, Coach Broyles' football team in '94, and then in '64, and then Nolan's in '94, with the exception of John McDonnell, the track coach, who's now won 41 national championships in track and field.
Well, aside from a few big wins here and there, like we said, the football program suffered a few growing pains in the conference in the 1990s. However, first-year coach Houston Nutt back in '98 brought some of the old enthusiasm back into the program. His Hogs traveled to Knoxville that season to play the number 1 ranked UT Vols. The Hogs were unbeaten themselves, and Paul, probably one of the hardest calls you've ever had to make in a game, with Clint Sterner attempting to run some time off the clock with the Hogs in control and ahead, slipping on a wet field, losing the ball in the process, trying to regain his balance, and that gave the eventual national champion Vols a chance to ride Travis Henry all the way to the end zone for the winning score.
Well, it was a bitterly disappointing ball game, and one that Clint Sterner had to live with, Ken, for 365 days. But there was redemption the next year when the two played in Fayetteville, and Sterner hit Lucas with a late touchdown pass in the end zone, and Arkansas won the ball game by the identical score of 28-24. And so I think those two ball games were probably two of the most exciting I have ever done
Lucas and Smith, who made that great catch, split wide to the left. Cobb's your tailback. Poitras steps off the line of scrimmage. 2nd and 8 Arkansas at the Tennessee 23-yard line. Poitras in motion. Sterner, play action. Looking, pumps, throws down the middle. Touchdown! Arkansas! Oh my! Lucas goes up, makes the catch, and the Hogs take the lead in this ball game, 27-24. 23 yards, and the Razorbacks have the lead.
We could talk about what ifs all day, but if that 98 team gets that win against the Vols, you have to think that possibly it seemed like the next week against Mississippi State they kind of sleptwalked through the first half. You know, things might have been a bit different for that team as they finished out the 98 campaign.
Yeah, Houston had disciplined 2 kickers and didn't have a kicker against Mississippi State. And that was a huge ball game and a very, very disappointing loss. I think State ended up winning it on a field goal. But Arkansas then went on down to the Citrus Bowl and played Michigan. But the great thing about that was that going back to Houston's start as the head coach in 1998, several of the seniors came to him and said, "Coach, don't tell us that we're going to rebuild. Tell us how we can win." And I think that's turned out to be Houston's best football team, his first one, and as you mentioned, they went 8-0. Tennessee was undefeated, and that's so strange that a break here or there, and Tennessee was able to go ahead and capitalize on that break, win the SEC championship, and then the national championship. Whether Arkansas could have done that, I don't know.
Matt Jones keeps 35 at the 40, 45, breaks a tackle at the Auburn 40, the 30, the Auburn 20, the 10, touchdown Arkansas!
Well, of course, Arkansas fans have been blessed to watch the talents this past 4 seasons of quarterback Matt Jones, who is now in Jacksonville, of course, in the Jaguars training camp, probably honing his receiver skills down there. Paul, is Matt Jones the most exciting player you've had a chance to cover in your entire career?
I think he's one of the most. I think he's the greatest athlete I've ever been around. He is phenomenal. The guy is a little bit over 6'6", 240 pounds, runs the 40 in 4.3, has great hands now as a receiver. The other night he caught, I think, 3 passes for 45 yards and a touchdown on a leaping catch in the end zone for Jacksonville. He will be a defining star, I think, for Jacksonville in the National Football League, given time. But he is a phenomenal athlete and certainly is one of the most exciting people I've ever been around, yeah.
The Razorbacks, with you calling the action, made history a couple of times during Matt's career, of course, talking about overtime games. I mean, on the road at Tuscaloosa, Knoxville, and Kentucky. But, of course, the biggie that probably stands out in your mind would have to be the first one, the 7-overtime marathon at Ole Miss back in 2001.
Yeah, we had a couple of 2 7-overtime games. The one, of course, the first one down at Ole Miss when Matt was a freshman, and then another 7-overtime game against Kentucky, 6 overtimes at Tennessee, and 2 Alabama, I think, overtime. Then we had an overtime game against Mississippi State also. So I can remember the first one, of course, and I was so fatigued and so emotionally drained, and so was Keith Jackson, our color analyst on the ball game. He was a great All-American at Oklahoma and then played for the Packers and won a Super Bowl. We looked at each other and we were just drained. And I think, dumbfounded by the way that the football team, both sides, handled that emotional ball game, and it was an incredible night. It really was.
I was going to ask you if the broadcasters get paid overtime when a game goes 7 overtimes.
Oh, we didn't get any extra money, and we didn't turn in overtime.
58, 56, Manning awaiting the snap. Armstead, Manning rolling out. Manning looking, throwing over the middle, and it's Arkansas wins! Arkansas wins! The 2-point conversion falls short. despite the pass being complete. And the Hogs race on the field in the longest overtime game in the history of 1A college football.
You knew with Matt Jones behind center you were never out of a ball game, and just this last game I want to ask you about, a game back in 2002 for all the marbles in the SEC West, the Hogs and LSU, a game that just kind of summed up the Matt Jones era, as it only took Matt 3 plays to move the Hogs all the way down the field with under a minute to go, no timeouts, for a touchdown to tie the game, and of course the extra point goes on to give the Hogs a win. Like you say, it was just a typical day at the office, it seemed, for Matt Jones.
Well, he'd been, I think, 1 out of 13 through the air up until that point, and Houston Nutt tells a great story. He went over to Matt, who was sitting on top of one of the lockers as Arkansas got the ball, and he was humming. He was kind of going, da-da-da-da-da-da. And Houston says, Matt, it's really time to get serious here. He said, we've got a long way to go to try and tie this ball game or win it. And Matt goes out and throws a pass complete downfield, and then Matt finds DeCorey Birmingham in the end zone in one of the great plays by both. Jones laid the ball where nobody else could get it, and Birmingham went up between 2 defenders and made the catch.
Jones back in the shotgun, the line of scrimmage, the 31-yard line of LSU. There's the snap. Jones looking. Jones now throwing to the end zone, and it is complete! A touchdown! Oh, my! I can't believe it. 31 yards to DeCorey Birmingham in the back of the end zone, and this game is tied at 20-20.
Arkansas was penalized for a celebration in the end zone, and so the extra point kick was about 35 yards. And I think everybody held their breath until that was through, and the final outcome was 21-20, and the Hogs went on to the SEC championship.
As a broadcaster, is it not a huge thrill? And you hear lots of debate, especially amongst Arkansas fans. Was it the right thing to come to the SEC? Should they have stayed in the SWC and possibly eventually be a part of the Big 12? But for me as a fan, I know it's very exciting to go to places like Auburn, Georgia, Alabama, and for a broadcaster, it has to be a thrill to be able to call games at some of the most hallowed stadiums in Southern college football.
Yeah, that's a good point, Ken, and you know, one that I enjoyed while I was at Vanderbilt, because I was in the SEC, then came to the Southwest Conference, and to me, the SEC is the premier college football conference in the country. The stadiums are unbelievable. Arkansas's budget went from about $8 million a year to about $8 million a year to about 35 or 36 million. It's been great, and I know a lot of people say that geographically Arkansas might have been best fitted to be in what is now the Big 12 conference, but I think there's no question that Coach Broyles and the university are very, very content and happy with the membership in the SEC. Maybe the only thing that they would like would be to play, I think Arkansas and Tennessee were beginning to get together as a real strong rival before they made the new rule that you play each other about every 5 years on a home-and-home basis. But it's been a great move, and I know that everybody in Arkansas, while it was so easy to go into Texas and play all of the other schools who were members of the Southwest Conference, I think our fans are getting adjusted to the long trips in the SEC and very happy that the Hogs are there.
Certainly appreciate your time today, Paul. It's been very entertaining, and like I said, one of the highlights of my broadcasting career, actually, to be able to sit down and talk a few Razorback memories with you, and just thank you for all the memories you've made for us as fans out there. A lot of us, we'll hear echoes of Holy Smokes and Oh My and all that stuff as long as we think about some of the biggest plays in Razorback history, and we have you to thank for that, and appreciate you catching up with us and letting folks here in the Mid-State know what you're up to lately.
Well, Ken, you're most gracious to have me on. I've been blessed to do what I have been doing 28 years now here in Arkansas, and got so many friends back in Nashville and the Tennessee area and Middle Tennessee. And thanks so much again, Ken. It's been really a pleasure to visit with you, and I hope everything goes well for you this fall.